The locker door swung open with a metallic squeal that echoed through the break room. Number 213. My number now, according to the orientation packet still tucked under my arm. Something white caught my eye immediately. A laminated card taped to the inside of the door at eye level. Professional job, too. The kind of lamination that didn't have air bubbles, edges heat-sealed smooth. Below it, another piece of paper. A photograph. I leaned closer. Someone had gone at the photo with something sharp. Methodical scratches, deep enough to tear through the glossy surface in places. The face was completely obliterated. Couldn't tell if it had been a man or woman, young or old. Just frantic, deliberate destruction concentrated on where the features should have been. The body remained untouched. Same Amazon vest I'd be wearing, same scanner gloves clipped to the belt. Same locker behind them. My locker. I reached for the photograph, then stopped. My fingers hovered an inch from the paper. Something about touching it felt wrong. Not superstitious wrong, just practical wrong. The kind of feeling you get before picking up a pan that might still be hot. The card drew my attention instead. Bold text at the top. Section 7G Protocols. 7 numbered rules beneath, printed in that sans serif font corporations love. Clean, official, permanent. Alvin Stark? I jerked back from the locker, hit my shoulder on the metal frame. The woman standing behind me didn't react to my stumble. Didn't blink. She held a tablet against her chest with both hands, fingers laced over it in a way that seemed rehearsed. Her supervisor badge caught the fluorescent light. Edith McLaughlin, Specialty Returns. That's me, I said. You're assigned to Section 7G tonight. Her voice had no texture to it, flat as a recorded message. Specialty Returns Processing. I glanced back at the card in my locker, then at her. Yeah? Close your locker. I did. The card and ruined photograph disappeared behind gray metal. Edith stepped closer. Not into my personal space exactly, but near enough that I could smell the coffee on her breath. Old coffee. Hours old. She unstacked her hands from the tablet and held one out, palm up. The laminated card rested in her palm. Same one that had been in my locker. Had to be. Same lamination quality, same text. When had she... Take it. I reached for the card. Her fingers closed around my hand as I grasped it, trapping the laminate between our palms. Her skin felt cold, not cool. Cold. The kind of cold that comes from standing in a freezer, not from poor circulation. The previous worker ignored Rule 3, Edith said. Her gray eyes fixed on mine without blinking. He didn't finish his shift. What happened to Rule 3? She released my hand. Don't ignore it. She turned and walked toward the warehouse floor entrance. Her footsteps made precise clicks against the concrete, evenly spaced, mechanical. I looked down at the card. Section 7G Protocols, it said. Mandatory compliance for all assigned personnel. The rules sat there in neat rows, waiting. I read them standing next to my locker. Read them twice, actually. The first time didn't quite process. Rule 1. Never scan items that feel heavier than they appear. Place immediately in yellow bin without processing. Rule 2. Packages that vibrate must be placed in red bin immediately. Do not investigate source of vibration. Rule 3. When conveyor belt reverses direction spontaneously, stand completely motionless until normal operation resumes. Do not look directly at any items moving backward. Rule 4. The emergency exit will emit sounds. Voices, alarms, knocking. Never open this door regardless of what you hear. Rule 5. You may hear voices of people you know. These voices are not real. Ignore all recognized voices. Rule 6. Report all anomalies to management before shift end. Failure to report will result in reassignment. Rule 7. If you see a package bearing your own image, do not retrieve it from the conveyor belt. Alert management immediately and exit the section. I flipped the card over. Nothing on the back except the Amazon logo and a date stamped in the corner. 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks since they'd printed this thing. 3 weeks since someone had decided these rules needed to exist in official, laminated form. The photograph flashed in my mind. Scratched out face. Same vest. Same locker. I shook my head, forced myself to think it through logically. This was hazing. Had to be. The kind of elaborate prank warehouses pulled on new guys to see if they'd spook. I'd heard about it from Philip back in college. His cousin worked at a meat processing plant where they convinced new employees the walk-in freezer was haunted. Kept the bit going for weeks with strategically placed ice blocks and fishing line. This was the same thing. Corporate version. Section 7G probably handled actual specialty returns, damaged goods, wrong items, customer complaints. Someone in management had a sense of humor and wanted to see if the new guy would freak out over spooky rules. The scratched photograph was a nice touch, committed to the bit. Edith's cold hands, though, her flat voice, the way she'd grabbed my palm. I looked at the card again. Rule 3. The previous worker ignored Rule 3. He didn't finish his shift. Method acting. Edith was in on it, playing her part. Probably watching on security cameras right now with the other supervisors, waiting to see if I'd ask to switch sections or demand an explanation. I slid the card into my vest pocket and headed for the warehouse floor. Not giving them the satisfaction. The main warehouse stretched out in rows of metal shelving that reached toward the ceiling. Familiar territory. I'd done the tour during orientation. Thousands of products in yellow bins, scanner guns beeping steadily, the constant hum of conveyor belts moving packages toward shipping. Section 7G sat in the back corner, separate from the main floor. A metal door marked the entrance. No window. Just a placard with 7G stenciled in black and a card reader mounted on the wall beside it. I scanned my badge. The lock clicked. I pulled the door open. The space beyond was smaller than I'd expected. Maybe 30 feet by 30 feet. A single conveyor belt ran through the center, emerging from a rubber-curtained opening in one wall and disappearing through another. 3 bins sat along the side, yellow, red, and gray. A scanner gun hung from a charging station. 1 folding chair, 1 metal desk with nothing on it. Fluorescent lights overhead. Concrete floor. Cinder block walls painted that specific shade of beige that only exists in industrial buildings. A door marked emergency exit stood in the far wall. Red, metal, the kind with a push bar. I walked to the scanner gun and pulled it from the charger. The screen flickered on. Section 7G. Stark, A. Shift start. Confirm? I hit confirm. The conveyor belt lurched into motion with a mechanical groan. Smooth movement, steady pace, normal. I pulled the laminated card from my pocket and set it on the metal desk. Let it sit there where I could see it, a reminder of the joke. The rules stared up at me, official and absurd. Never scan items that feel heavier than they appear. Vibrating packages in the red bin. Stand motionless when the belt reverses. I laughed. Couldn't help it. The sound came out sharp in the small space, bounced off the cinder block. This was hazing. Elaborate, committed, corporate hazing. The first package emerged from the rubber curtain. Standard cardboard box, maybe 8 inches square. Shipping label facing up. I lifted the scanner gun and waited for it to reach me. My shift had started. The first 2 hours passed in mechanical routine. Box after box rolled down that belt, standard returns with torn corners and stained cardboard, items shipped to wrong addresses or refused at delivery. I scanned them, sorted them into the yellow bin for restock processing, and settled into the rhythm of warehouse work I'd known for years. My shoulders loosened. My breathing evened out. The protocol card sat on that metal desk, gathering dust from the ventilation system, and I thought less about it with each passing package. Then the 3rd hour started. The box emerged from the rubber curtain looking innocent enough. 8 inches square, maybe less. Clean brown cardboard with a shipping label that identified the contents as a children's toy. Some stuffed animal called a rainbow panda, the kind of thing that sold for $15 and got returned because the kid already had 3 of them. I reached for it the way I'd reached for the previous 100 packages. My fingers closed around the cardboard and my knees buckled. The thing weighed 40 pounds, maybe more, dense and compact. The weight concentrated in the center, pulling my hand down before I could adjust my grip. I caught it against my chest, stumbled back 2 steps, felt the scanner gun swing on its cord and knock against my hip. The weight wasn't the worst part. Through those scanner gloves, thin synthetic material designed to let you feel barcodes and package seams, I felt a pulse, regular and steady, a rhythmic pressure that pushed outward against my palms in a pattern I recognized because I felt the same thing in my own chest every second of every day. A heartbeat. I held that box away from my body, extended my arms despite the strain in my shoulders. The pulse continued, unmistakable now, throbbing against my gloves in a tempo that didn't match my own racing heart. The protocol card flashed through my memory. Rule 1, printed in those stark black letters. Never scan items that feel heavier than they appear or emit unusual vibrations. I set the box down on the concrete floor, stepped back, looked at the shipping label again. Rainbow Panda, 1 pound estimated weight. Shipped from a warehouse in Kentucky. My hands shook when I picked it back up. 40 pounds of impossible weight, that heartbeat pulsing steady and slow. I carried it to the red bin in the corner and placed it inside, feeling the relief in my forearms when I let go. The bin was empty, had been empty all shift. Now it held 1 package that shouldn't exist according to every law of physics I understood. I returned to my position by the belt. The conveyor kept moving, packages emerging in steady succession, and for the next 40 minutes I processed normal returns. Standard weight, standard contents, nothing that violated the basic rules of reality. Then the humming started. Package after package came through emitting vibrations I could feel before I touched them. A shoebox that trembled in my hands, an envelope that buzzed against my fingertips, a larger container that produced a low drone I felt in my teeth. Each one weighed wrong, too heavy, too light, densities that shifted when I adjusted my grip. I followed Rule 1, didn't scan a single one, carried them to the red bin and set them inside, watching the pile grow. 17 packages total. I counted each one as I placed it down, some automatic part of my brain keeping inventory the way I'd been trained. 17 items that hummed and vibrated and weighed impossible amounts, stacked in that red bin, creating a sound that made my skull ache. They weren't humming in harmony. Each package produced its own frequency, its own distinct pitch, and together they formed a discord that felt deliberate, calculated. The kind of sound that made you want to cover your ears, except it wasn't quite loud enough to justify the reaction, just persistent enough to crawl inside your head and stay there. I stepped away from the bin, put distance between myself and that pile of wrongness. My hand went to my pocket, reaching for the protocol card before I remembered I'd left it on the desk. I walked over, picked it up, read Rule 1 again, even though I'd already followed it. The laminated surface felt normal under my fingers. Regular plastic, regular ink, regular paper stock underneath. The photograph sat beneath it on the desk surface. I'd glanced at it back in the locker room, registered the scratched-out face, filed it away as part of the elaborate prank I'd convinced myself this had to be. Now I picked it up and looked closer. The person in the image wore the same Amazon vest I had on, same scanner gloves on their hands. I could see the distinctive yellow stitching along the index finger and thumb that marked the current model, the ones they'd issued 6 months back to replace the old gray ones. The scanner gun hung from their belt on the same side I wore mine. They stood in front of locker 213, my locker. the number visible over their shoulder, clear enough to read despite the damage done to their face. I flipped the photograph over. A timestamp printed on the back in small gray text. The date 3 weeks ago, the time showing 11:47 in the morning. 3 weeks. The temperature dropped in my chest, started somewhere behind my sternum and spread outward through my ribs, into my shoulders, down my arms. Not fear exactly. Recognition, maybe. The cold certainty of understanding something you'd been avoiding. McLaughlin's words came back. The previous worker ignored Rule 3, didn't finish his shift. Previous worker, 3 weeks ago, standing in front of the same locker wearing the same equipment in the same position I now occupied. I wasn't doing a job that needed filling because of company expansion or seasonal demand. I was replacing someone, literally standing in the exact spot they'd stood, wearing the same gear, processing the same impossible packages that hummed in a bin 10 feet away. The photograph trembled in my hand. I set it down on the desk, face up, that scratched-out face staring at nothing. The knocking started, rhythmic, steady. 3 strikes, pause, 3 strikes, pause. Coming from the emergency exit door in the far wall. I counted the intervals without meaning to. The pause between each set of 3 knocks lasted exactly the length of time between my heartbeats. I felt the pulse in my throat and heard the knock on the door, felt the pulse again and heard the next knock, the pattern matching so precisely it couldn't be coincidence. Rule 4 scrolled through my memory. Do not acknowledge voices or sounds from the emergency exit door. The knocking continued. 3 strikes, pause, 3 strikes, pause. My feet moved before I decided to move them. 1 step toward the door, then another, my boots scuffing against concrete that suddenly felt less solid than it should. The scanner gun swung at my hip. The humming from the red bin faded into background noise, replaced by the knocking that matched my pulse, that called with a rhythm my body recognized on some level deeper than conscious thought. I should have stayed put. Should have returned to the conveyor belt, processed more packages, ignored the sound the way the protocol card explicitly instructed. The curiosity didn't feel like mine. Felt implanted, foreign, a compulsion that came from outside my skull and burrowed inward. But my legs kept moving, carrying me across that 30 by 30 room toward a door I had no reason to approach. The knocking grew louder with each step. 3 strikes. Pause. 3 strikes. Pause. My hand reached for the door handle despite every rational thought screaming to stop. The knocking stopped. My hand hovered 3 inches from the door handle, fingers extended toward brushed metal that showed no rust, no wear. Nothing to indicate this emergency exit had ever been opened. The silence felt worse than the rhythmic pounding. Heavier somehow. Then I heard my mother's voice. "Allie Bear, baby, open up now." My chest went tight. She'd been dead 6 years, ovarian cancer that metastasized faster than any doctor predicted. I'd held her hand in hospice while she forgot my actual name, cycling through my cousin's names and her brother's name, and finally just sweetheart, because the morphine had taken everything else. She never called me Allie Bear after I turned 12. I'd made her promise to stop. "I need you to let me in, Allie Bear. It's cold out here." The voice came through the metal barrier with perfect clarity, not muffled, not distant. Right there on the other side, close enough that if I opened the door she'd be standing in arm's reach. The same slight rasp she'd developed from 20 years of menthol cigarettes. The same upward lilt at the end of sentences that made statements sound halfway to questions. I stepped backward. My heel caught the edge of the metal desk. "Alvin, son, don't be difficult." My father's voice now, smooth and certain, carrying that edge of disappointment I'd spent my whole childhood trying to avoid. "You've always been difficult. Just open the door so we can talk about this properly." He was alive, still living in the same house in Montgomery, still working the same route for the Postal Service. We'd talked on the phone 4 days ago about whether I should renew my car insurance through his agent. "This is ridiculous," Maria's voice cut in, warm and exasperated in that specific way she'd perfected during our 3 years together. "You know I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. 5 seconds. Open the door for 5 seconds, and I'll explain everything." My hands started shaking. Maria lived in Austin, managing a bookstore near the University District. We'd ended things 8 months back when I'd moved to Alabama for this job. Mutual decision, no drama. The kind of breakup where you both acknowledge the timing's wrong, but neither person's actually wrong. "Dude, seriously, what are you doing in there?" Philip's voice joined the chorus, his California casual bleeding through even in whatever this was. "We've been waiting out here for 20 minutes. McLaughlin said you'd let us in. You're making this weird." 4 voices now, overlapping, talking over each other in a desperate tangle of familiar inflections and speech patterns and personal histories that only I would know. "Allie Bear, please. Son, I'm losing my patience. Just 5 seconds. That's all I need. Making this super weird, man." I pressed my palms against my ears hard enough that my skull ached. The voices didn't diminish. They came through my hands, through the bone, settling directly into my auditory nerve, or my memory, or whatever part of my brain processed sound. The conveyor belt kept moving behind me. Steady rhythm. Packages emerging from the rubber curtain every 45 seconds or so, traveling the 10-foot span, disappearing through the exit curtain. Work continuing like nothing was happening. I had to keep working. That felt important. Critical, even. I'd been hired to process packages, and the packages kept coming, and if I just focused on the actual job instead of the impossible voices and the pounding in my head, I stumbled back toward the conveyor belt. My hands were still shaking, palms sweaty inside the scanner gloves. The yellow bin sat there with its collection of normal packages, the ones I'd processed correctly, following standard procedure. The red bin hummed its discordant chorus of vibrating anomalies. A package rolled past. I grabbed for it. Wrong bin. I realized it the instant my fingers closed around the cardboard, but momentum carried me through. My trembling thumb hit the scanner trigger. The red light swept across the shipping label of a package that had weighed 40 pounds despite listing a 1-pound children's toy, a package that had pulsed with a heartbeat that wasn't mine. The scanner gun emitted a single sharp beep. The conveyor belt screamed, not mechanical failure, not the tortured squeal of gears grinding or belts slipping, a scream. Human-shaped, human-pitched, full of pain and terror and rage, all compressed into a sound that came from rubber and metal and whatever machinery lived behind the curtained walls. Then the belt reversed. Packages that had disappeared through the exit curtain came rolling backward, emerging into the 30 by 30 room like footage running in reverse. The belt's direction changed completely, carrying everything toward the entrance curtain instead. And I understood with perfect clarity that I'd just violated Rule 3. Stand completely still if the conveyor belt reverses direction. Do not scan packages. Do not move until belt resumes normal operation. I froze. Packages flowed past me, moving backward along the belt in a steady stream. The ones I'd processed hours ago. The ones I'd sorted into the yellow bin for restock. They rolled past at the same mechanical pace as before. But everything about them felt wrong now, corrupted somehow. I looked down at the nearest package. The shipping label was changing, not fading, not smudging, changing. The return address that had read something standard, some residential street in Ohio or Michigan or wherever, now showed numbers that made my eyes hurt. Street addresses climbing into the 100,000s, then millions, digits adding themselves in real time until the numbers sprawled across the label in compressed font. The city name shifted from English letters into something else, alphabets I didn't recognize. Characters that might have been Cyrillic or Arabic or some combination that didn't exist in any real language, curling and reforming as I watched. The zip code formed patterns, repeating sequences, numerical progressions that my brain tried to solve automatically, tried to find the logic in, but the logic led somewhere my conscious mind refused to follow. I could feel the pattern there, just at the edge of comprehension and understanding it would mean something permanent, something I couldn't undo. I looked away from that package. Another rolled past. Its label showed a return address on a street called, in a city my eyes couldn't focus on, with a zip code that counted backward from infinity. Another package. This one's destination address listed my name, Alvin Stark. But the street address was the warehouse's address, and the city was spelled in symbols that hurt to perceive, and the state abbreviation was 2 letters that didn't exist in the English alphabet. The voices at the emergency exit door had gone quiet. The belt kept reversing. Packages kept flowing backward, their labels rewriting themselves into impossible destinations, and I stood frozen in the center of the 30 by 30 room while my hands trembled and my mind tried desperately to stop processing what my eyes were showing it. The protocol card sat on the metal desk where I'd left it. Rule 3 printed in clear block letters. I hadn't stood still. I'd scanned a package, and now everything was running backward into places that shouldn't exist. The rubber curtain at the sorting area entrance rippled. Something pushed through wearing an Amazon vest. I saw the vest first. Standard issue, same fluorescent yellow-green as mine, same reflective strips catching the overhead fluorescence. Then I saw how it moved, shoulders jerking forward one at a time in mechanical sequence. Left, right, arms swinging at wrong angles, elbows bending slightly backward at the bottom of each arc, legs lifting too high with each step, knees rising toward chest level before stomping down flat-footed against concrete. Someone learning to walk for the first time. Someone remembering how limbs were supposed to function, but getting the details wrong. It cleared the curtain completely, and I saw its face, not a face, the absence of one. Smooth skin stretched tight over skull contours, beige tan like foundation makeup applied over nothing. The surface pulled taut from temple to temple, chin to hairline, creating perfect tension without features underneath. No eye sockets, no nose ridge, no lip definition. Just skin forming a mask over void, and I knew, somewhere in my gut where recognition lives before rational thought catches up, I knew that underneath the stretched surface there was nothing at all. The photograph on my desk, the scratched-out face in the image, this thing wore that absence made flesh. My lungs forgot how to pull air. The scanner gun in my right hand felt like it weighed 60 pounds, arm muscles trembling to keep it raised. Behind me the conveyor belt continued its backward rhythm, packages sliding past with their impossible addresses, but I couldn't look away from the figure jerking toward me across the 30 by 30 room. It wore scanner gloves, same model as mine. The left glove had a small tear near the thumb joint. My predecessor, the person who stood in front of locker 213 3 weeks ago while someone took their photograph. The worker who ignored Rule 3 and didn't finish their shift. This is what happened when you broke protocol. The thought arrived complete, certain, carrying knowledge I didn't want. This facility didn't fire people for violations, didn't write them up or send them home. It transformed them into something else, something that could wear human skin and Amazon uniforms while moving through space with the mechanical approximation of life. My knees wanted to buckle. I locked them, feeling my kneecaps grind against ligaments. The faceless thing stopped 7 feet away, head tilting sideways at an angle no living neck should permit, 45 degrees past normal range. Its right arm rose in stuttering increments, elbow, shoulder, wrist, until it pointed toward the emergency exit door behind me. The knocking started again. 3 strikes, pause, 3 strikes, pause. Louder than before, aggressive. The metal door rattling in its frame with each impact, and I realized the rhythm had changed, no longer matching my heartbeat. Faster now, more insistent, carrying urgency that made my teeth ache. The voices erupted simultaneously. Mom calling Allie Bear, please. Dad saying, listen to me, son. Maria's warm exasperation. Philip's casual California drawl. All of them speaking over each other, words tangling into incomprehensible noise except for fragments that cut through, don't let it. Get out. Behind you. Run. Warning me. The understanding hit like cold water in my lungs. They weren't trying to lure me outside, weren't attempting to trick me into opening the door and stepping through into whatever waited beyond. They were trying to warn me about what was already in here, what had emerged from the sorting area wearing my predecessor's work vest. Rule 4 said, ignore all sounds from the emergency exit door. Don't acknowledge voices, regardless of familiarity. The rule existed to keep me focused on the real threat. The thing standing inside the room with jerking movements and stretched skin over nothing. My hands started shaking hard enough to make the scanner gun rattle. I wanted to drop it. Wanted to run for the metal door with the card reader. Wanted to be anywhere except this 30 by 30 space with packages sliding backward and a faceless creature pointing at the exit while voices screamed warnings I'd been instructed to ignore. Something scraped against the conveyor belt. Different sound from the steady rhythm of packages rolling past. Heavier. Deliberate. I looked down. A box slid toward me against the backward flow, moving upstream while everything else traveled away. 8-inch square. Standard cardboard. Shipping label facing up. My eyes caught the destination address first. Alvin Stark. My full name in printed text. Below it, my apartment address on Morrison Street. Apartment 3B, the city spelled correctly, Alabama abbreviated properly, zip code accurate down to the final digit. Return address showed the warehouse facility. This building. Section 7G listed specifically. My hands went numb. The scanner gun nearly slipped from my grip. I adjusted my fingers, felt the textured rubber through my gloves, forced myself to keep reading. Contents, replacement. Single word. No additional description. No item number or product category. Just that one terrible designation explaining exactly what the package contained, what it was meant to do. Rule 7. The final protocol on the laminated card. If you see a package bearing your own image, alert management immediately and evacuate Section 7G without delay. Not image. The rule said image, not name. I'd read it wrong, assumed it meant photograph. But this was worse. This was me. My information, my address, my existence reduced to shipping data on a box moving against the flow of reversed machinery. The package slid closer, 3 feet away. 2.5. I looked at the faceless creature. It had lowered its pointing arm and now stood motionless except for its head, which continued tilting further sideways. 60 degrees, 70, skin stretching tighter across the absence underneath until I thought it might tear. Behind the emergency exit, the knocking intensified to continuous pounding. The voices reached fever pitch, individual words lost in overlapping desperation. The package touched my shoe, bumped against the reinforced toe with gentle pressure. The creature's legs bent, knees rising, torso lowering into a crouch that looked wrong, joints articulating at angles that suggested the bones inside had been removed or rearranged. Its arms spread wide, fingers extending, the torn glove on its left hand revealing smooth skin beneath that matched the featureless face. It lunged. No wind-up, no preparatory tension. One moment crouched 7 feet away, the next moment airborne and closing the distance with inhuman speed that defied every law of physics I understood. Arms outstretched, fingers reaching. Faceless void aimed directly at my chest. I saw the tear in its left glove growing larger as its hand stretched toward my throat. I grabbed the nearest package from the red bin. Didn't think about it. Didn't plan it. My hand just moved while that thing was airborne, closing the distance between us with its arms spread wide and fingers reaching. The box I grabbed was the first one I'd put in there. The rainbow panda toy that should have weighed 1 pound, but crushed my knees with 40 pounds of wrong density. The one with the heartbeat. The pulse beat against my palm through the scanner glove as I pivoted and threw it hard as I could. The package hit the creature center mass just as its fingers were about to reach my throat. Contact made a sound I can't describe properly. Not a thud, not a crack. Something wet and hollow at the same time, like puncturing a drum made of skin. The box exploded. Not tore open, exploded. Cardboard shredded outward in strips that hung suspended in the air for half a second, and something came out of the center. Something that didn't have a shape I could focus on. Dark and writhing and moving in too many directions simultaneously. It shrieked. The sound came in frequencies that shouldn't exist. Started somewhere below my hearing range. Felt it in my chest cavity and stomach lining. Then climbed up through octaves that made my teeth ache and sinuses burn. Kept climbing higher until it hit a pitch that went straight through my skull. The overhead fluorescent lights exploded in sequence. Pop, 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 moving from the conveyor belt side toward the emergency exit. Glass rained down in chunks and powder. The tubes inside the fixtures shattered completely, releasing that mercury vapor smell that catches in your throat. Darkness dropped over everything except where the thing from the package moved. It gave off light somehow. Wrong light. The kind that made the shadows deeper instead of pushing them back. The faceless creature stumbled backward, its legs bent wrong again, knees going directions knees shouldn't go, and it caught itself against the conveyor belt with one hand. The belt was still running in reverse, packages flowing upstream, and when the creature's palm pressed against the moving rubber, smoke rose from the contact point. Could smell burning flesh. The creature didn't make a sound. The emergency exit door stopped pounding. The voices cut off mid-word. Everything went quiet except for the shrieking thing and the conveyor belt's mechanical grinding. I ran. Not toward the metal door I'd come in through. Not toward the emergency exit where the voices had been. Toward the rubber curtain the creature had pushed through, back toward the main warehouse floor, where McLaughlin's office sat near the supervisor station. My boots hit the concrete floor in rhythm, left, right, and I focused on that sound instead of the shrieking behind me. The thing from the package was doing something back there. Could hear the creature making wet impact sounds against the walls and floor. Didn't look back. Kept my eyes on the rubber curtain ahead, getting closer with each stride. Burst through the curtain into the main warehouse space. The fluorescent lights out here still worked. Regular white-blue illumination over rows of conveyor belts and sorting stations and workers in yellow vests moving through their shifts, like nothing unusual was happening 30 feet away. Nobody looked up. Nobody acknowledged me running full sprint down the center aisle toward the supervisor station. McLaughlin had said something when she'd assigned me to Section 7G. When I'd asked what happened to the previous worker, she'd said he ignored Rule 3 and didn't finish his shift. Said it flat. Matter of fact. Then she'd walked away toward the warehouse floor. Rule 3. Don't scan packages while the belt runs in reverse. Stand completely still. I'd scanned a package. The belt had reversed because of it. Then I'd moved. Violated the rule twice in sequence. McLaughlin would know what to do. She'd assigned me there. She'd given me the protocol card. She'd warned me specifically about Rule 3 before I'd even started. The supervisor station came up fast. Small office with windows on 3 sides, elevated 5 feet off the warehouse floor with metal stairs leading up. Could see McLaughlin through the glass, sitting at her desk with her hands folded on the surface in front of her. She was looking directly at the door. I hit the stairs and took them 3 at a time, grabbed the door handle and shoved it open hard enough that it banged against the interior wall. McLaughlin didn't flinch. She sat in her chair behind the metal desk, hands still folded, gray eyes fixed on me without blinking. Her graying black hair was pulled back in the same tight bun. Her olive skin had that sallow undertone that made her look slightly sick under the fluorescent lights. On the desk in front of her sat a laminated card. New one. Not the protocol card I'd left in Section 7G. This one was blank side up. "Close the door," she said. Flat monotone. No inflection. I pushed the door shut behind me. My chest was heaving, could feel sweat running down my spine under my vest and shirt. My hands were shaking so hard the scanner gloves rattled. "Sit down." There was a folding chair against the wall to my right. I grabbed it and sat, legs weak enough I almost missed the seat. McLaughlin reached across her desk and flipped the laminated card over. It had text on it. Couldn't read it from this angle, but could see the same formatting as the protocol card, numbered list, corporate font, laminated to prevent damage. "You passed," McLaughlin said. I stared at her, tried to make my mouth work, couldn't get words to form properly. "The initial test," she continued. Same flat tone, same emotionless delivery. "Most workers either flee immediately when the belt reverses, or they're claimed by the entities when they violate protocols. You did neither." I scanned a package during reversal. Got the words out through my tight throat. I moved. I violated Rule 3. "Yes. The thing came through the curtain, no face, wearing a vest and gloves. Your predecessor." I threw a package at it. "Adaptive response under pressure." McLaughlin tilted her head slightly. Minimal movement. "Resourceful use of available materials, acceptable problem solving." My brain wasn't processing this right. The thing was still back there in Section 7G, the creature that used to be a person, the shrieking entity I'd released from the package. All of it was happening right now, 30 feet away through a rubber curtain, and McLaughlin was sitting here talking about acceptable problem solving. "Section 7G doesn't process standard returns," McLaughlin said. Picked up the laminated card and held it between her thumb and forefinger. "It processes rejections from somewhere else entirely, a place that occasionally sends replacements for workers who break established protocols." Replacements. For personnel who violate the rules. They're rejected from their original positions and sent back through our facility. She placed the card down on the desk again, aligned perfectly with the edge. "Your predecessor scanned 17 packages during belt reversal. When the entities claimed him, he was rejected and returned. What you saw was the processed result. The package with my name on it, my full address, return address listed as Section 7G, contents, replacement." "That was supposed to be me," I said. "If you'd failed the test, yes. The process would have claimed you, rejected you, and returned you as a replacement for the next worker assigned to Section 7G. McLaughlin's gray eyes stayed fixed on my face, unblinking. The cycle continues until someone passes the initial evaluation. What happens now? Now you receive your actual assignment. She slid the laminated card across the desk toward me. The protocols you followed were basic screening criteria. Your real work begins tomorrow at the start of your next shift. I looked at the card but didn't pick it up, could see text printed on it. More rules, more protocols, longer list than the first card. What's in Section 7G? I asked. What am I actually processing? Items that don't belong in this version of the warehouse, McLaughlin said. Returns from facilities that exist in adjacent operational spaces. Rejections from processing centers that handle different categories of inventory. She stood up from her chair in one smooth, mechanical movement. Your job is to sort them appropriately and ensure they're routed to correct destinations. The entities assist with quality control. Quality control. They claim workers who demonstrate insufficient adherence to established protocols. This ensures only capable personnel continue working in specialized sections. She walked around her desk and stood 3 feet away from me. You demonstrated capability. Therefore you continue. I picked up the laminated card. It was warm, like it had been sitting in sunlight, even though we were inside under fluorescent lights. The text listed 12 rules this time. Rule 7 still mentioned packages bearing my information. Rule 11 mentioned something about voices in the ventilation system. Rule 12 just said, if you finish your shift, report directly to this office before leaving the facility. The entities in Section 7G have been contained, McLaughlin said. You may return to your locker and conclude your shift for today. Tomorrow you'll begin actual processing work. She turned and walked back to her desk, sat down, and folded her hands in exactly the same position as when I'd entered. I stood up. My legs were steadier now. The shaking in my hands had mostly stopped. The laminated card was still warm in my palm when I walked out of her office and down the metal stairs to the warehouse floor. McLaughlin slid the laminated card across her desk toward me. The plastic surface caught the overhead fluorescence, throwing a brief glare into my eyes before I picked it up. 12 rules instead of 7. My thumb traced the edge where the lamination sealed, still warm from whatever printer she'd used. The text sat centered in that same corporate sans serif font, each numbered item spaced with bureaucratic precision. Rule 7 about packages bearing my information. Rule 11 about voices in ventilation systems. Rule 12 requiring direct reporting to this office after every shift. I didn't read the others yet. Couldn't focus on the words because somewhere beneath us, beneath the floor, and McLaughlin's filing cabinets and the hum of her desktop computer, the screaming had stopped. Complete silence from Section 7G. My predecessor, that thing in the yellow vest with the featureless face and backward-bending joints, had been making sounds when I'd fled through the rubber curtain. Not words, just noise, high-pitched and constant, coming from somewhere inside that smooth expanse where a mouth should have been. The kind of sound that shouldn't be possible without lips or vocal cords or a tongue. Now nothing. I stood there holding the warm card, listening to the warehouse floor beyond McLaughlin's windows. Conveyor belts running their normal routes, scanner guns beeping, voices calling out bin numbers and package weights, all the regular sounds of third shift doing what third shift does. But underneath, in that 30 by 30 room I'd just escaped from, nothing at all. The containment protocols are effective, McLaughlin said. She hadn't moved from her position behind the desk, hands still folded in that precise way. The entities have accepted the exchange. Exchange. My mind caught on that word, turned it over. The dark, writhing thing I'd released from the Rainbow Panda package had attacked my predecessor, and now everything had gone quiet, and McLaughlin called it an exchange. What happened to him? The question came out before I decided to ask it. Processed. McLaughlin's tone didn't change. Same flat monotone she'd used for everything else. The entities provide quality control. Your predecessor violated protocols 17 times during belt reversal. The rejection was inevitable. 17 times. 17 packages he'd scanned while that belt ran backward and those shipping labels transformed into impossible addresses. I'd only scanned one before I'd understood what I'd done wrong. One violation had brought that faceless thing through the rubber curtain. 17 had turned someone into that faceless thing. I looked down at the card again. 12 rules now instead of 7. My actual assignment protocols, McLaughlin had said, for real work beginning next shift. How many workers have you sent into Section 7G? McLaughlin's gray eyes fixed on mine. No warmth in them. No recognition that I'd just asked about human lives. 43 in the past 18 months. The number hit like a physical weight. 43 people assigned to that room with a single conveyor belt and 3 colored bins and the emergency exit door that had pounded with familiar voices. How many passed? You're the 7th. 7 out of 43. I did the math automatically. 16% survival rate. The rest claimed or rejected or processed or whatever bureaucratic term McLaughlin used for whatever happened when the protocols failed. When workers failed. The card felt heavier in my hand. Not like those packages that weighed 40 pounds when they should have weighed 1. Just regular weight made unbearable by what it represented. Somewhere in this warehouse, in some section I hadn't seen yet, a package bearing my face waited on a shelf or in a bin or on a belt, my replacement. Ready for the next worker who got assigned to Section 7G and made the same mistakes I'd almost made. The cycle continuing. McLaughlin had explained it so clearly, sitting there with her folded hands and a motionless delivery. Entities sending replacements for workers who broke protocols. My predecessor scanned during belt reversal, got claimed, got rejected, came back as the thing in the yellow vest. That thing had tried to touch me, to grab me, to do whatever it would have done if I hadn't thrown that pulsing package. And when I'd failed, when I'd violated Rule 3 and should have been claimed, the entities had prepared my replacement too. Packaged and labeled and sent back. Waiting. The conveyor belt sounds from the main warehouse floor had changed. I registered it distantly, beneath the closer noise of McLaughlin's computer fan and the fluorescent lights. The rhythm had shifted from that corrupted backward motion to the normal forward flow. Section 7G running standard operations again. The test complete. The entities satisfied. Everything returning to whatever passed for normal in that 30 by 30 room. I stood in McLaughlin's office with her laminated card warming in my palm and understood exactly what I'd gotten myself into. Not a hazing prank. Not some elaborate corporate joke designed to frighten new hires. Something real. Something that had claimed 36 people in 18 months and would claim more. Would keep claiming them as long as Amazon kept hiring workers and assigning them to Section 7G and handing them protocol cards with rules that seemed impossible until you violated them. The photograph in my locker flashed through my mind. Someone in an Amazon vest standing in front of locker 213 with their face scratched out by something sharp. The timestamp showing 3 weeks ago. My immediate predecessor, 42 before that. How many more after me? I looked at McLaughlin across her desk, searching for something human in her expression, some acknowledgement that she just sent me into a room designed to test whether I'd survive contact with entities that processed human beings like defective merchandise. Nothing. Just that same flat affect, those gray eyes, that mechanical precision in every gesture. Return to your locker to conclude your shift, she said. Next shift begins at the same time tomorrow. Report directly to Section 7G using the protocols on that card. Tomorrow, she expected me to come back, to walk through that metal door with the card reader and process packages that weighed wrong and pulsed with heartbeats and vibrated with sounds that caused skull pain. To follow 12 rules instead of 7. To become the 8th survivor out of what would eventually be 44 workers, 45, 50, however many it took before someone decided Section 7G wasn't worth the body count. I should have walked out, should have left that laminated card on her desk and headed straight for the parking lot in my car and anywhere else. Should have called whatever regulatory agency handled supernatural quality control in warehouses and reported the whole thing. But I didn't. I stood there holding that warm card, feeling the weight of what I'd just survived and what I'd just become part of, and understood that I was going to come back tomorrow, not because I wanted to, not because the pay justified the risk or the job couldn't be replaced, because somewhere in this vast warehouse, in whatever section handled processed rejections, a package with my face waited for the next worker to make a fatal mistake. And I needed to know what happened to it, what happened to all of them.